morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, and thank you very much for coming today. We have our Masterclass. As you know, every month we have Masterclasses and they're for free. Usually we record all the Masterclasses and we put all the records online on our website afterwards. I would like to welcome Lars from Singapore and Stuart from the United Kingdom, Tabisile from South Africa, and all of us. We can participate. My suggestion is to make it as an open discussion. We may have some startup speakers, of course, to share their opinions at the opening, but the more opinions, the more interventions from all of us, definitely it will be better for the discussion. Sometimes, if you get one word, if you get one sentence from speeches or from participations, or if you get one idea, it can change your life. Sometimes, it can change even your attitude or approach to our absolutely beautiful and dynamic business called public relations. And I don't know today, 2026 even, if the combination of public and relations exists, because everything is public and everything is relation. And it could be even nonsense. It could be like, I don't know, wet water or a transparent window, because really it's something which is completely different. But one of the most important differences today is that we live in the environment of uncertainty. We live in an environment which is changing every day. We live in a political international environment having a couple of wars all over the world. We live not even uncertain, but also unpredictable management, a couple of very big countries. So it reflects on our life, but it reflects on our business. And for my understanding, we live in a different world. Call it uncertain world, call it maybe very sensitive, call it fast changing, call it dynamic, but it's a completely different world. And I would like to ask Lars to start with a couple of words, and then I will give the floor to Stuart and Tabisile, and then we can start discussing between all of us what can we do with this uncertainty? How shall we overcome the challenges which we have every day with our clients, with our partners, with the target audiences, and very often with ourselves, in our families, with our daily behavior, even in the houses or in the office. So Lars, please, it's your turn. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's really interesting. And I think what we see here in Asia, I'm calling in from Singapore, is not different from anywhere else in the world, right? It's really about the intensity, the volume of signals, of noise that we get just adds all the time. And it's anything. It's government announcements. It's malfunctions of products. It's natural disasters. It's certain customs tariffs that are changed overnight. So I think it's one, the intensity, the other one, the speed that increases and travels faster than ever before. One, because of the internet, of social media, of always on platforms. Second, it gets accelerated and multiplied by the billions of users and the algorithms on top of it, right? So the reality is, yes, there might be more things happening, but definitely we get bombarded with more noise out there. So from my point of view, it's really about how do we differentiate what's noise and what's signal that we need to act on. And happy to elaborate a little bit more on what we're doing with our clients to help them really talk about it, because it's not an easy one. Everybody feels overwhelmed, more stressed than ever. And I believe that we really have to look into making this palatable, and manageable. Otherwise, we never sleep and we'll all go insane.
Thank you very much. Stuart, from the beautiful city of Leeds in the United Kingdom.
Indeed. And I think in the UK at the moment, I mean, everything that Lars was talking about kind of Singapore and the Asian market, I think would apply in the UK and Western Europe. Um, I think one of the challenges that we're facing in the UK is that not only do we have to cope with global uncertainty, and whether that's tariffs, whether that's kind of geopolitics, we also have our kind of own UK mini crises happening at the moment. I don't think there's a time in my kind of career when we've had as much uncertainty as we have at the moment. It looks, I mean, we've had kind of the global news of the former Prince Andrew being arrested and the whole kind of repercussions of Epstein. Just yesterday, we had Peter Mandelson, a former cabinet minister, arrested. But one of the things that we're actually seeing at the moment, and we have an important by-election coming up tomorrow, is for the last 100 years, the UK has been a two-party democracy. It has pretty much been led the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, with no offence to my friends in the Liberal Democrats, the third party, who were briefly in a coalition government. That's over. If we actually, the two main parties are now second and third in the polls. We have a brand new kind of populist right-wing party sitting at the top of the polls, predicted to kind of, they did extremely well in local elections last year. They're predicted to do the same again this year. So in terms of what businesses can do, what public relations and communications can do, that's actually one of the things we that needs to be happening. Just yesterday, a big lobbying company appointed its first advisor for that used to work for Reform, this new populist party. I was spending some time last week helping to write drafting papers to advise a client on what it needs to be doing with this. So we've got that level of uncertainty. But then there's also one of the other kind of big drivers is obviously AI. You can't do a session in 2026 without talking about AI. And I'd make the point here that we shouldn't just be talking about generative AI, which is what gets all the hype. This is how kind of using AI to create stuff, using AI to predict stuff. The other two that are advancing massively are what we call embodied AI, which is AI in objects. So things like autonomous vehicles. I know a brilliant company called Starship, and they make delivery robots, which basically pick up your groceries from the store and deliver them to your doorstep, and it solves that last mile challenge in terms of sustainability. Then you also have applied AI, which is how it's being used to diagnose diseases, to create vaccines, and all of those types of issues. There are huge ethical implications that the PR industry needs to be able to advise clients on. There's one of the things we're doing lots of work on is social license for AI. And if organizations are beginning to use it in any of those three ways, they need to be doing it in the right way. And we, as PR professionals, have got to be able to advise people what that right way is, what that safe way is, and to get trust from stakeholders. The kind of the final, there's so much you could say here, but the final kind of point I'm going to make before we can kind of open it, hear from Tbilisi and then kind of open it up to discussion, is about how AI is replacing search as how people find things. And it's been a huge body of work for us last year. Just this year, just this week, we've onboarded two new clients to be able, that we're doing that with. And looking, and whatever you call it, whether you call it GEO, which is generative engine optimization, or AEO, answer engine optimization, it's a really new field, and it is filled with hype. It is filled with snake oil salesmen who are trying to sell you expensive tools that don't work. The reality is the data isn't available, the methodologies are being developed, but that doesn't mean to say we can afford to ignore it. And one of the organizations we're talking to at the moment, one of the reasons they can't ignore it is if you can influence AI answers, you need to be doing so, because this is a global body. And if they're not doing it, other people are. So this is where disinformation and misinformation comes in. You're going to have bad actors, and I think we know who we mean by bad actors. We're looking at states like Russia or Iran, who are going to be doing this. Just they're going to be looking at how they can influence AI. Sorry, I just got stopped dead. Then a bird just flew into the window in my garden office. What was I saying? Oh yeah, disinformation, misinformation. We need to be influencing and helping our clients and employers to influence AI, because if we aren't, other people are going to be. So there are so many kind of things we need to be considering. And that's without the other thing that people talk about AI is how we use it ourselves. There's a lot of people kind of talking about this, but in reality, adoption levels within the profession are pretty low. Most teams and most PR agencies are dabbling at the most. They're experimenting. They think if they pay for a tool or they give staff a tool, something's going to happen. And the reality is very different. Unless you actually back that up with a strategy and a plan and training to ensure AI literacy, and to take away employees' fears of using it. People are rightly afraid they're going to lose jobs, etc. We've got to hold their hands. We've got to introduce it in the right way. There are so many kind of issues facing practitioners. And just the final point on the AI answers, there was an explosion kind of last week because Gartner, the big $4 billion kind of consultancy research firm, predicted that PR fees for earned media were going to increase twofold over the next couple of years, which is quite astounding. Personally, I'd take that with a huge grain of salt. I don't think that's what's going to happen at all. And even if it does, it's not necessarily PR, because digital and SEO agencies are pivoting rapidly. And even though they know nothing about it, they are going to be eating our lunch unless we get to grips with it. That said, even though I don't see that dramatic change, it absolutely isn't something we can afford to ignore. And if it's not on a chief communications officer's desk right now, and they don't have a plan for it, they're going to be in trouble. I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Stu. Thank you. I really appreciate. WCFA, how do you look at the world from the southern point of Africa?
Thank you so much to Stuart and Lars. But I think that the fortunate part about Africa is we've always been in crisis and there's always been uncertainty. So I think from an adaptability perspective, I think we've got the muscle to be able to adapt to any changes. However, we are not immune to what is happening globally that is also creating complexity to the uncertainty that we live with on a day-to-day basis. I mean, whether it's geopolitical issues, whether it's the instability. I mean, at present, Africa has got about 2 or 3 wars, if not more, on the go. So we kind of are comfortable in operating in a noise as PR practitioners within this part of the world. And I think for me, there are 2 key things that PR practitioners in Africa, but also globally, need to consider if we want to declutter the noise. First one, building brands that are based on trust and ethics. Because previously brands were based on the gimmicks and then the fluff that goes obviously sometimes with our profession. But what we are now calling on is PR practitioners to go back and strengthen the trust they have with their stakeholders, the trust they have with their customers, so that you are almost able to transition beyond the noise and sometimes to wade through the noise, because the noise will continue. But I think if you've got a brand that is trusted, you are a company that is trusted and is ethical, you are likely to keep your center holding. The issue of ethics is quite critical. I mean, Stuart has actually gone into territory around AI and new technologies. And here there is a gray areas in terms of the ethics around these new tools and this new way in which we are doing. So to Stuart's point, PR practitioners need to learn, but instead of immersing themselves in the hype of the tools, because I think the tools will change, they will improve in time. How do we firm up on the ethics of AI and the new technologies that we're dealing with? And lastly, the issue of responsible leadership. For the first time in our continent, our leaders and PR leaders in particular in the companies that they advise need to look beyond the corporation and start thinking ecosystems approach to public relations. And to that extent, for the first time, you've got to think about your company, the context in which it operates, the continent, and the global framework within which your brand is being positioned. And therefore, the issue of sustainability becomes key, particularly for us in the region, and where leaders have got to begin to play a role in making sure that they not only fix for business, but they fix for country. And it elevates, I think, the role of PR, not only from a messaging perspective, but from taking positions which may be difficult in an uncertain environment, but are quite critical in the advancement of the ecosystem in which that business finds itself.
Thank you. You're quite right. The big issue is how to change our everyday life in the office, even attitude to the teams and attitude to the clients in a way that they are, because I believe that transparency and ethics, trust, of course, they're very important. But what is the price of the trust if you are not professional? And vice versa. You might be an excellent professional, although I don't believe this, without being transparent. So maybe trust and transparency are absolutely important, but they had been very important for our business from the time this business exists. 100 and whatever years, 120, 130 years. But today, it should be a good combination, good chemistry between the transparency, ethical behavior, and professionalism. And ethics is very simple today because the world is transparent. 20, 30 years ago, you can put a question mark whether this professional or this CEO or manager or account executive is ethical or is transparent. You don't know, you should make a deep research. Today, you just go to ChatGPT or whatever, and they tell you who are you and whether you are ethical. But the professionalism, very rare, they cannot judge whether you're professional or not. And people are looking for, you go to a dentist, basically you don't care whether the dentist is ethical or not, or transparent or not. You look at the dentist, whether he's professional or not. That's why you pay money, that's why you go to. So how do you think, by the way, what is the most important today? To be a great professional or to be very ethical and trustful?
One of the things I'll just kind of jump in quickly. So Maxim was talking about transparency. And I always find that a fascinating word because we make the assumption that transparency is a good thing. And if you look at things like AI, ethics policies, there's always something in there about transparency. But what does it actually mean? What are we going to be transparent about? And if I just give you kind of some quick examples. So previously I worked with Rolls-Royce, the engineering company, so not the kind of cars. And I actually worked with them on small modular reactors, mini nuclear power stations, but they're best known for making aircraft engines and submarine engines. So to assess the safety of aircraft engines, for the last 20 years, they've used AI. That's a kind of, and it's never been talked about. It's never been something that airlines or Rolls-Royce have been transparent about, because why would they? It just improved safety. That was the reason they were doing it. And they've published something called the Alethea framework, which helps you to assess the ethical use of AI. And the problem is now, if we tell people that, they don't trust AI. So it actually makes them more nervous and more scared of what's happening, even though it's always been happening. So that's kind of one example. The second would be there was some research by the Institute of Internal Communications that said a third of employees wouldn't trust AI content from their CEO. Well, how much content from a CEO is written by the CEO anyway? Most of it is ghost written by their internal comms team. So, and actually, if you can get AI to ghostwrite content in somebody else's voice more accurately and portray them more realistically than another human can. But if you tell people, the trust disappears. So I think we really have to think about what that actually means in practice and what we want to be transparent about and when and the purpose for doing so and what the ethical route actually is, because it's not straightforward. Final point on transparency is if you make public and we're seeing this playing out in governments around the world at the moment, if you make public channels transparent, so for example, with things like Freedom of Information Act, so you can see things, people move elsewhere. They move to a secret channel. So those conversations are still going on. So you've got to be really careful about kind of, what you mean by that and about whether it really is about increasing public trust.
Well, thanks, Stuart. I think one thing, and let me jump in here, is transparency. Thanks for clarifying that. But I feel like it's also about authenticity versus authority, right? So like your example with the company CEO, I think employees rather want authentic point of view than a packaged one. And I think to some extent, it's also the PR industry's fault that we made everything very nicely packaged, no edges, put a bow on it, but it's all very vanilla, right? We don't want to take any risk for our clients. I think what people want is an authentic point of view, even if it's sometimes wrong, rather than being overly polished, because polished gives you the idea of anybody could have said it, right? I think that's the authority. CEO has it. Whether is he authentic? Because otherwise it backfires, right? Because the other thing of transparency, we did a lot of research with financial services companies. One of the number one sources for advice on financial products for consumers is friends and family, who are usually the least qualified for it. So that's a great example where you kind of put transparency and authenticity over authority. So a lot of times in our own behavior and communication, we take authentic kind of perceived communication over people that should advise it, right? The other part, and that's also interesting, what you said about Rolls-Royce and their engines. I think everything now, AI is kind of that term for everything and anything. Whereas also a lot of people, AI think, oh, that's done by ChatGPT. No, a company in the airline industry is highly regulated, high security measures, and it's probably more of a machine learning algorithm than a general open source AI thing, right? So I think that's our job to help also differentiate what is AI. But we see that a lot of times we just go with what's the flavor of the month, and just now everybody has an AI story. Before that, everybody had an ESG story. Before, you know how it goes, right? And then you basically just dilute the meaning of it. So in the terms of AI, I think we need to also be clear on what does it mean, in which context, and what are we actually talking about, because otherwise everything becomes nothing, right? So I think that's the important thing to look at. If we look at all these things, what do we offer audiences to make educated decisions, whether to trust or to decide? And I think that's where we have to start with all the brands where we work with, to have a clear North Star or values decision framework. I'll give you an example. We had a discussion with the company Hasbro, not a client of ours, who does toys for kids. So they're very clear on their North Star. Number one is having safe, educational, entertaining toys. Everything else then has to fall in line. Does it matter or not? Right? And I feel like that's one of the key things to wrap it up for me. It's in a world of uncertainty, new technology, authority versus transparency, what really matters? And that's kind of companies diluted themselves and the strength of their brand authority by either not having a common kind of North Star and not be clear on what's their point of view, or extreme opposite, they just went after everything that's out there. I have to comment on everything. No, you don't need to. You neither have the means nor the authority to comment on everything under the sun. Same time, please don't choose the safe vanilla route, because then you don't mean anything, right? So that's for me kind of the advice that we give a lot of clients in this world of uncertainty. What do you base your decisions on? When do you decide it's important or not? Because otherwise, again, we wouldn't sleep a second.
Thank you, Lars. I guess, and I'll also just comment on the issue of authenticity. I think more than ever now, as public relations professionals, we need to understand we've got discerning audiences who, as you had outlined, Lars, are looking beyond the brand promise. What is the build-up to that brand promise? Whatever you are promising, whether it's product, whether it's service, is it a service that comes from an ethical perspective? And with that, it then calls for us to now also be true to our brand personalities. And as you say, we used to be everything and to everyone. So as corporates, you now need to be very specific to who you are. What is your brand personality? Be authentic to that personality. And to some extent, yes, AI is an enabler. It does not replace the face of the company. It does not replace the voice of the company. And I think to be the authenticity part comes in the company putting itself in the center of the technologies that are driving what is happening within the context. So again, we used to be public as in everyone was publics, but I think for the first time, you've got to choose your own publics and stick with those groupings and be consistent with them so that they can, one, get familiar with your voice. Secondly, you use that as a platform to build trust. But most importantly, the issues that we are talking about transparency, you are able to then be more open in a discerning collective that is not mass, but is specific to the needs and the objective of your brand.
That's just some really, really good points. Just kind of picking up on what Tbilisi and Lars have said, and also the comment about how do we make CEOs, or question, authentic. There's a really, I think kind of Lars kind of nailed it earlier when he talked about kind of it's PR's fault, because sometimes we try to package stuff up too much and put that bow on it. When actually we could be a lot more honest and a lot more truthful, and we could be facilitating and enabling people. I mean, I always remember there was one client I sat down and worked with, and my advice to them was to be more you, because actually, when they were being themselves, they were brilliant, but they put on a performance when they went on TV or they did a speech or whatever. And there's a really good quote by Alistair Campbell. So Alistair kind of was, kind of Tony Blair's head of communications, and he has a reputation of being the master of spin doctoring. The Alistair today is very much not that person, because he's actually continued to innovate and continued to modernize kind of how he does communications. And one of the things he'll talk to you about today is how people can be more reasonable than you'll think they'll be. And what he means by that is actually, if you open up about what went wrong, why you have to do it like that, and be honest about it, people will actually be reasonable. It's if you try to cover it up, it's if you try to spin it, it's if you try to not tell people the reasons. that's when you're going to get caught out. So something, and I just think too often we, as PR people, we haven't modernized enough. We haven't innovated in the way that we actually communicate.
I think we have a question, a raised hand from Chetna here. Hi, Chetna.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to add on because I hear a lot of discussion on transparency. So I was thinking of giving an example, which is a great example for showing how transparency works for scientific organizations, for example. So, like, we know this big particle physics laboratory, CERN, based in Geneva, and they're known to be the home for the Large Hadron Collider. And what strikes me always is that they're very transparent about finances. The machine, the cost of the machine, which is 4.75 billion euros, is online. So you can get the finance budget of CERN. The salaries of all the employees is also online because it's an intergovernmental organization. And some would say that it also backfires because a lot of time the communications is all about why do you spend so much on a machine trying to look for what we are made of, particles and stuff. On the other hand, this also gives you the transparency to compare it with other power plants like for cola and Pepsi, which basically spent 4 times more than the Large Hadron Collider in the region. For example, we have Nestle in Switzerland. So if you compare that, so it's a challenge for sure to be transparent, but it does help tailor communications if you are ready to fight the fight.
Thank you, Chetna. So Ong, who put a question here in the chat, and please everybody else also feel free to post questions here or raise your hands, is running an agency very successfully out of Indonesia. Ong, how are you doing? So he put out the question about maybe you want to elaborate on what you meant, yeah? Selamat pagi.
Okay. Well, I think authenticity is something that a lot of PR people say, but very few seem to achieve that with their clients. And I think the reason why is that the clients have to do the work themselves. I mean, in the sense that they have to dig deep and find out, what is it all about, what their organizations are all about. This is something that the Page Society has referenced as corporate character. But you can't outsource corporate character to a PR person. PR person can facilitate that, but they actually have got to do the hard work, which most managements are not willing to do.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Absolutely right. I mean, character, brand, values actually has to come from the leadership and the organization itself. And there are different ways on how you want to build this, right? Bottom up, top down, revolving parts, but it's definitely not a quick fix that PR can put on a memo and bring it to life. It's how you bring a brand to life at the end of the day. And that creates overarching authenticity, right? Any other questions out there also from the audience? Or Maxime, what's your point of view?
I really think that those days, for my understanding, professionalism is much more important than any other things, because if you are not ethical, then clients, partners, vendors can recognize within a couple of minutes with a simple search. If you are not transparent, then clients will not work with you. But if you are professional, then you can choose the right targets, the right audience for the client. You must have reaction 24/7. For one or another reason, it's not anymore work from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever you have a working time. So the fact that we must be 24/7 available for our clients. The fact that you can wake up 2 o'clock in the morning and you can have a ready decision for what to do and how to do this. The fact that you can use all the new applications or the new brains, additional brains like AI and many others, of course, make you much more reliable and much more consistent in your professional abilities. So I would put a huge emphasis those days, and all of us, we signed so many ethical charters or ethical rules and standards and code of ethics all over the years. Today, I don't think anybody can sign anything or must sign anything because everything is transparent and visible. But if you're not professional, then first of all, your team would not recognize you. And secondly, your clients will not recognize you. So, and also, I would put a lot of emphasis on learning every single day. Learning, 2019, I graduated Harvard Kennedy School. 2024, December, I made a PhD in the university, and I realized what is the huge, and today I'm chair of the board of the largest economic university in Bulgaria. And when I'm meeting my colleagues, professors, academicians or whatever, I can see the huge difference between the theory and the practice. And you can have a brilliant graduate coming to your company. If they don't have the practice, they're really zero. And the fact is that the theory is moving with 20 miles per hour and the practice is moving with 100 miles per hour. And this gap is enlarging every single day, with all my respect to Chetna and to scientists and the people, but also she's engaged with CERN, and those guys, they're not on the theory, they're on the practice. And if they don't change every single day, if they don't learn every single day, if they don't use the science to improve their practical abilities, then they will be outdated. So really today, I'm concentrated totally on the increasing and improving the practical abilities of my team and my company to prove to the clients that we are the best professionals. And we may not be, but just to prove to the clients. The rest of yes, fake news, which we were discussing yesterday, is a big issue. But, the forums 20 years ago, they were a big issue, anonymous forums or whatever. Social media 10, 15 years ago, they used to be a big issue. Now everything is manageable. Fake news will be manageable in 5 to 10 years. So Chetna, you wanted to add something? Sorry.
No, I was okay. But actually, Maxime, I would like to ask you something on this topic because I noticed you came up with a book recently. I saw it on LinkedIn on trust. So I missed like the first few minutes of the session, but I'd like to know from some of you, what formula do you think is needed for building trust?
I have a very simple answer to your question. Professional understanding. But Lars, Stuart, rest,
Yeah, maybe if I can jump on that, I think it's relationship building. I mean, and as we're talking about this topic today of how do we manage uncertainty, we also need to understand that relationships are dynamic. So brands need to grow with their clients, and within that, the relationship will have its ups and downs. And how you then build trust is when your clients, or sorry, your customers begin to understand when you are on the down and how you handle your down, and when you are up, how you handle your up. And if you can build that consistent relationship over time, I think people then begin to trust you in that even if there's fake news or you go through a crisis, they're able to borrow on the relationship equity that you have and the trust that you have built with them over time. So I think core for me, I support Max professionalism, definitely, but investing in building the relationship with your clients, it's extremely important.
We have about 8 minutes left. So if there are any more questions from the audience, now it's the time to ask. Otherwise, I think we should already kind of look into what are kind of practical takeaways on the topic of how to deal with uncertainty, because we did a big kind of round from what's the world today. We went down into a few aspects of it. Maybe I'll take a first step on it. It's like we touched on AI. So I feel like if you haven't done it, every owner or consultant should look into doing a constant AI audit, because also what LLMs spit out changes all the time. I think Stuart said, whoever claims they have a solution is a liar. I don't think I'm paraphrasing like that, but the technologies and platforms are changing so fast. It's the same like declaring that you have cracked Google's SEO algorithm. It's a black box assumption making kind of play, right? But you should do an audit what comes out, because your customers, the spouses of your employees, your vendors, your company neighbors, regulators, your competitors, they're all using search in an AI age to figure things out on the industry, on products, on your brand. So what do they find? The summary has way more power than ever before, because nobody does the job and goes 10 clicks down in an SEO kind of search, right? So I think that's something that we constantly have to do, to also see what are the left field kind of attacks that might come, because we suddenly appear in a context we don't want to appear in. So uncertainty, well, create some uncertainty by know what's said about you, your brand, your topic. Build authority before you need it, right? It's a little bit like, don't try to sign up for health insurance after you break a leg. So building a reputation takes time. The typical thing, it takes 20 years to build, 5 seconds to destroy. If you want to have a view, a voice as a brand, you have to continue building it. And if your audiences move to TikTok, you're on TikTok. If they're on Vine or online or whatever kind of platform is next, then that's where you have to be. It doesn't matter if you're a Gen Z, a boomer, or however you define yourself, right? Align legal policy and comms early. We had that massive shift on 10 years ago. No brand would ever say sorry, because legal would say that's an admit of guilt and you get sued. But I think generally the conversation has changed from the legal court to the court of public opinion, from legal license to operate to social license to operate. So make sure that you have that kind of alignment with your legal policy, strategy, marketing, comms teams on how do you want to deal with crisis you don't even know how they will come up, right? Because you don't have the luxury to hide behind a legal 5-page statement anymore that takes 2 weeks to draft. And last but not least, from my point of view, it's like separate speed from urgency. Not everything that's thrown at us needs immediate response. Sometimes take the chill pill if you know what's really moves the needle for you and not. Something needs attention, something doesn't, something is brewing, then keep watching it. But don't freak out about every kind of little piece of noise that goes out there. That's kind of my kind of piece of advice. Uncertainty is not the enemy. Also because everybody is framed with it, right? Uncertainty is an opportunity because the interpretation matters. And that's where consultants like us actually might have a golden age, because we might become the sense makers. And that's how we double our budgets. Not because Gartner says so, but that's a different story.
Thank you, Lars. Any other opinions, my friends?
Everything that Lars just said, he basically stole the lines I would have used. It was brilliant. One that I will add is to go back to Chetna's question about trust, because it depends what you define by trust, and because often people don't really understand what's meant by that. So, a couple of quick examples. On AI answers, the research that we did last November, one of the figures got so much media attention. It was even on kind of like TV quiz shows and stuff, which was, what do 44% of people trust in the UK? And the answer is AI. And that compares with just 38% for government, or wait for it, 24% for social media influencers, which is where brands are spending all their money, but they're not spending it on kind of optimizing AI answers. And for things like corporate communications and B2B, that's even more important, because consumer brands, their AI is likely to cite earned media sources. For corporate, it's likely to cite owned media sources if you're doing it right. So I think the thing about trust that I would kind of emphasize is it's about meaning what you say. If you say something, show up and be it. Yeah. So you've got to, the way to get trust is to be what you say you are consistently. And people will forgive blemishes. They will forgive mistakes if you're doing that. Not too many, but they will.
So if I
Thank
can,
you, Stu.
thank you, Stuart. If I can, Maxime, I think uncertainty is the new constant. And so as the PR practice, we need to be adaptable and almost relinquish control and learn how to be flexible within the context within which you're operating. But I think Stuart and Lars actually said all of the things that are quite critical in taking us forward. Thank you.
Maybe we should stop calling uncertainty, just to forget about this word. We can call it our life. I mean, that's what is it is what it is. What do you think about that?
The world will continue to be volatile. It will
Lars,
continue
your mic.
uncertain.
Lars, your mic.
Yeah, I just realized that. I mean, I just had the discussion yesterday with some of our juniors in the company. I said, we are supporting businesses, largely businesses. Businesses have basically, business owners, leaders have one key job. Make educated guesses and put your money behind it. It's betting on an uncertain future. You're trying to reduce it to risk instead of uncertainty. But at the end of the day, that is, right? So our job is then, if you put it, move uncertainty to calculated risks. Add interpretation frameworks that make a little bit more sense of it, because that's where everybody is. It's all about best guesses and placing bets. Hopefully more bets play out than they don't. That's how every company started. And at the end of the day, too many companies think they have more to lose than not. That's why they try to play defense and save over everything else and don't realize that actually puts them further down than playing for the next chapter. But that's maybe a more too optimistic, bullish kind of philosophical approach to communications and business than generally on how we shouldn't go blindly into every battle. That's the other thing, right?
Yes. So maybe it's a good point to conclude and wrap up the conversation today in the morning. And if you would like to add something, you're mostly welcome to come to the other session at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Central European time. It should be 4 o'clock London and 4 o'clock South Africa. And I don't know what with the timing in Asia, but in Asia, you will have deep sleep at that time. But it will be, and sweet sleep. But it will be also something like morning time in the United States. And I hope that, but if you can join us as well. The fact is that really we live in a new world. We are doing new type of business. It had been in the past as well. Every 4 or 5 years, we were telling, oh, it's a new life, it's a new environment. but this time it's very close to the revolution. It's very close to something which is totally changed, and the environment is absolutely new, not only because of the wars, not only because of AI, but also we are new people. We cannot do business old style because we are entirely new in our brains, in our DNAs, and I hope that as a new people, we will create new rules of doing business. This will be widely and very intensively discussed in Davos during our summit in April 23rd this year. And I would send this message to anyone who did not decide yet to join us in Davos to follow the Davos Summits.com, to follow us on WCFA global.com, to follow us on social media. And I guarantee that this year in Davos, really all those topics about uncertainty, about new way of doing business, about how to implement AI in a way that we increase our trust to the clients and to the partners and to the vendors, there will be discussion. A lot of takeaways will be taken from all of you. We have an excellent set of speakers, and also the way we do this, and some of you who joined us last year, Chetna was with us, of course, Stu and Tabisila and some more, they can realize it's not a very big room. It's a room for about 150 people. And it's more or less a very boutique event. So the people on the stage, the panel, the speakers, they might be very easily interrupted. We exchange our opinions. Of course, we record this. And I would be very happy to see you all in Davos this year, April 23rd. Jessica, our executive director of the association, is responsible for the organization. So please contact her. And thank you very much for our speakers today, Lars, Stuart, and Tabisile. And hope to see you also, the one who will not sleep, like Lars in Singapore. I hope to see all of you in the afternoon, 5 o'clock Central European time, the same Zoom link. And I wish you a perfect day, and thank you very much.